Geoff Bodine eventually bought the team.
Right.
How much of an adjustment was there in working with him?
Geoff he's been a driver all his life, right? So he knew the driving part of it. He didn't know the owning part of it. So trying to coach him along the way and get what he wanted in the cars. He had his own little mindset, you might say, on what he wanted in a car, things he did, things he wanted to feel. So trying to get those things going, and then fill him in on what we had for inventory of cars, and then that was kind of more of a, I wouldn't say a learning curve, but he had to learn the owning part of it, the ownership part of it, and we had to teach him the, what we had. Not teach him, but just let him know what we had and what we were doing in this track and that track, and he'd want to give his input on what to do or what road course racing he was pretty strong in road course racing back then, and we built a special road race car, for him for Watkins Glen, and then Sears Point then, and then anyway, I think he came on after Sears Point, but I think we might have built a road course car for him for Watkins Glen, that year, and I know we did for the next year for sure. But it's just trying to just inform him more than anything else. I think is kind of what we did most of all. Different guy to work with compared to Alan. Alan was his own person, so. He left car-wise was 100% whatever I thought I needed to do, and he'd give me a little input on setup, So that was a different adjustment for me, because that's not what I've been doing, all my life with Alan, So it's kind of like, here's what I want to run, and then when we get there, then we kind of adjust from there, And so, we went off, Alan and I went off history, what we've done in the past, and that's kind of how we did things, But yeah, that's kind of how we did things, It was a different deal for sure. He was there every day, of the, trying to make things run from a business standpoint too.
You guys became basically the flagship team for Hoosier.
Yeah.
The following year. How big an issue was that for you in setting up the car?
It actually was not bad. But with that being said,
okay,
we tested a lot. I don't remember how many races there were in '94, but if there was 35 races, we tested 37 times.
Wow,
double. I mean, so we had double the schedule. So the tire was different. It had its own want. Things, but once you kind of got that figured out, and obviously we worked close with the Hoosier engineers, and I knew the construction we had going to a test, and I knew construction we had at the, so once we kind of got along there, or when they had construction changes, I was there. I knew every bit of the construction change we had, and was part of the, not necessarily decision process, but part of the process on deciding what tire to take, and then. Of course, when we come back to the racetrack, there was no. Now, when you go do a tire test, and you don't know all the little small ins and outs. Even when I go to do a general tire test for ARCA right now, it's still you don't know all the ins and outs. Back then, I knew everything. I was informed every step of the way. And that helped. And so being able to set up those cars with that, and that tire had a few things it really liked, especially on the intermediates. Had a few things it really liked that most people wouldn't have done, So that was, I wouldn't say made it easier, but it helped, even though it about killed us. Because the same guys that tested are the same guys that went to the racetrack.
Wow. Wow.
That was a great year. We had we had won a lot of races. We had some problems, we had some failures. Unfortunately, and because we were on. If you could go back and look at our finishes, where we were running when we had a failure, we'd have won the points by hands down. Especially with the old point system back then. So, yeah, it was. It's a shame we couldn't capitalize on the championship for Geoff back then.
1997, you get a deal to go to work for Pinsky Racing as Jeremy Mayfield's crew chief.
Right.
How did that come about?
Actually, it was still Cranifus Haas.
Okay,
yeah,
because
because it hadn't made the Pinsky transition yet. So yeah, it was Cranifus Haas, Carl Haas, being the Haas part of it, and that was, Geoff and I, we didn't really see eye to eye on a few things. He was definitely struggling getting sponsorship, and then Michael Cranifus, which was head of Ford when we won the championship. So we, had a small relationship with him. So, we knew each other. And that's kind of how that started. And Jeremy called me up, and that's basically said, told me everything he had going on. Michael told me everything he had going on. It sounded like a good opportunity, So, and that's what I did. Yeah, that was. I thought it went good. We got Jeremy his first win. That was always good. So then shortly after that, it went to. I think the next year it might have went to Pinsky Krampus, and I think Carl wanted out of the program a little bit, whatever it was. Carl and Michael were good friends still, but I think Carl wanted out of the program, wanted to focus more on his IndyCar stuff. So anyway, that was and it worked out pretty good. Really, we had a good relationship then.
At some point, Jeremy became teammates with Rusty
Right.
at Pinsky.
Right.
And from everything that I've ever heard, Rusty wasn't exactly thrilled with having a teammate, or maybe he wasn't exactly thrilled to have Jeremy as his teammate. I don't know. I was just on the outside looking in. But what was actually taking place from your standpoint?
We had a lot of rule changes back then. And what you ran last year or last race didn't really necessarily mean that was the deal you need to run. And Rusty always, this is, again, I'm on the inside, listening to their side, so I know what we're doing, but he didn't like what we were trying to do. We were trying to get, more aggressive with the front ends and that was what we called the 5 and 5 rule, 5-inch valence height and a 5-inch spoiler height. So that was a different deal to handle. So that's when soft springs started coming in and bigger sway bars, and that wasn't what we run back then, before all that, So it was a new era rolling in right then for 5 and 5, and Rusty was struggling. Again, I'm just taking this from the guys. Rusty and I didn't talk about it that a lot. We didn't talk about it what each other of us ran setup wise. It was like there's they had the 2-car and the 12-car, and we were in different shops. We're teammates, a lot of things common, but it wasn't really necessarily that was that we they shared all the information. They knew what we did. And Rusty didn't like it. That's what I hear. I've never talked to Rusty about that.
Was it an awkward position for you to be in, given your relationship with Rusty?
It was, for sure. Rusty and I have never, ever not got along. We've always got along, but we haven't really been really close to each other since the ASA days. We hadn't been, go out to dinner and stuff like that. We always talk and we're always friendly. To this minute, we're all the same waves, but we're not ones that, we're not buddies, So we didn't talk race cars that much. Very seldom did we talk race cars. But so it was awkward for sure, absolutely. But Rusty helped Jeremy a lot. I know back to Rusty being Rusty, telling everybody his secrets. He helped Jeremy a ton at Bristol. On how to get around, how to drive Bristol, and then and even though they may not see eye to eye on some things, and then we went to Homestead for a test. And this is also at the same time period, they had a Pinsky chassis and we had a Pinsky Krampus chassis, because we each built our own chassis. So all that kind of is internal feuding, not really feuding, but internal battles going on, you might say, on what chassis we're going to run. And I think we went to Homestead. We had our Pinsky Krampus chassis, and Rusty had his Pinsky chassis. This is when Roger Pinsky owned Homestead. And you're able to test whenever you want to. Yeah. But we went to Homestead, and we were slow, and even though we were testing this chassis, trying to figure out whose chassis we need to go to for the next season, because this is toward the end of the year. Rusty's over there. You need to drive. He's looking. We had data on, which we always had data back then. Had data on, and he said, "You need to drive it this way. Look at my throttle trace." He brings Jeremy over and shows him his throttle trace. So it wasn't like there was, this big feud going on, by no means. So he still helped Jeremy, and Jeremy did what he could. And Jeremy tried to tell him his reasoning behind his thought process, in our chassis stuff. But our chassis setups, we were one of the first ones to do the soft springs and the bigger bars and all that good stuff, which is way beyond what we're doing right now. So.
You moved over to Dale Earnhardt Incorporated to be Steve Park's crew chief about a third of the way into the 1999 season. How did that work out?
Yeah, so that worked out really well. So just, Jeremy was wanting to win races, and he was at the same time looking for his divorce right now. So he had changed quite a bit, and Michael Krampus thought I wasn't wasn't the guy for him anymore. So he let me go. And that tore me up. I was so furious. I was just furious. I didn't really see it coming, which was my fault. I should have seen it coming. And Jeremy sponsored my kids' little bandolero cars. So it's like and I thought everything was good, but he done a few things that I didn't care about, and Michael asked me about them, and I told him. And next thing, I guess I did a couple of things that Jeremy didn't care about, and Jeremy told Michael. Next thing you know, Michael says, "You're out of here."
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, that was like whatever day it was, probably a Monday or Tuesday or something like that, and I was furious. Just tore me up, upset me more than anything else. It just maybe hurt me more than anything else, just because of what happened. So anyway, Robert called me up, Yates, and somebody else called me up, and then Dale called me up. He said, "Come see me now." Being the way Dale is, he said, "So I got to do something. No, you need to come see me now. I got to get on a plane in a few hours. You need to come see me right now." I said, "Okay, I'll be right there." And that's how it worked out. That's how I got there. Ty Norris had been called me up before that, and I said, I really can't for a second, So the next thing I know, Dale's calling me up. So I went up there in Dale's office and with Ty, and I was still furious about being let go. But anyway, all that being said, showed up with Steve and hadn't even met Steve. Knew who Steve was, obviously, hadn't even met him, but next thing you know, I'm within hours, walking in the next day. Actually, not even that day. When I went in the office right there, he hired me. He drugged me down to the apparel room, give me some apparel, give me a few other odds and ends, and put me to work. It's like,
wow.
He went and showed me around and told me, I said, here's where you work, here's what you're gonna do, here's your people, introduced me, and like, here I go. This is like, my wasn't hours after, it was like less than 2 days or something like that. But yeah, we showed up to the Winston Open race, and the one Winston Open with Steve, and I think we had a test there, if I remember right. Yeah, I think we had a test, and I brought a few things that we had been doing, some of my shocks that I've been doing over there, and then, applied them to that, and just things clicked, really. We made a few changes along the way, car-wise, just kind of my thought process behind them, and then, we started running really good, really, and then Dave Charpentier was an engineer there, which is a longtime engineer in the sport. Worked with Alan, knew Alan, was a data engineer with Alan, so I had a relationship with him already, knew him. And him and I got along really well. And Bono Mannion, Kevin Mannion, Bono Mannion was there. He's the car chief, and then, we all hit it off. Steve and I got along great, and we hit it off, and I thought we had great performance, really,
What was it like working for Dale Earnhardt?
Ooh, it was tough. I heard this the other day. He carries the Intimidator logo, or the nickname well. He is intimidating. But that's what he was back then. He walked into a room, whether he walked in a room with board members or he walked in a room with crew members. He got your attention. And you paid attention to him. So that was neat. I'm really glad I got to be a part of the program when it was successful. So, but he was. He wasn't hard to work for because you didn't see him that much. You see him come through the shop. He's always there in the mornings, coming through. If he was in town, he'd always be there in the mornings. Sometimes we usually had a morning meeting. Sometimes he'd pop in a meeting, so he's always there. You see him a lot, but you didn't see him you didn't interact with him from a working standpoint, The one time that we went to Daytona was terrible. Almost missed the race with Steve early on. Might have even been that same year. I can't remember exactly. And I'm complaining like hell about the motor program, and just to Ty Norris. Boy, he come to me the next day. He was that Monday. He was so mad at me for bitching about the motors. But we're gonna fix that, he said. We're gonna fix that problem. Don't you worry about that no more. Don't complain about it at the racetrack anymore either. And he did. We know they devoted more money to the engine, to restrictor plate engines. So that was one thing about it. If you had problems, you felt like that, they needed to address. from a company standpoint, whether it's bodies, they addressed it. They worked hard. That was a good group of racing people. A good group of racers, as you hear a lot. You always hear that term a lot. So, but that was neat working for him. Like I said, very intimidating, but by no for sure. But you've learned to you couldn't if you had something to say, you had to say it. If you had feelings that you need to be said, you need to say it. Even if it was to the point of we just need a little more money, a little more budget right here to go do this. And that's what 9 times out of 10 he's going to go work on that budget. And that's like the restrict plate motor program. That was by hands down one of the best restrict plate motor programs we had back then. As far as in the industry.
Again, another tough question, and I apologize, but 2001 Daytona 500, what do you remember about that day?
Golly, that was crazy, isn't it? It's one of those deals where you just didn't want to believe it. You just did not want to believe it, and we heard pretty quick that we, through I don't know if it's through Dale Jr. or what it was, but we heard pretty quick that we had lost him. And then that was, it was devastating, just unbelievable, devastating. Just couldn't believe it. Many times if you watch somebody wreck and watch wrecks, it wouldn't be one you'd think you'd lose somebody's life. It was just devastating. My wife and 2 little boys are there. We had a motorhome there. They were all there, and I had to fly back. We ended up delayed the plane on leaving, but still flew back. And then, it was just devastating. Still is. The sport misses him too, for sure.
Was there a sense for you that you had been through that because you had experienced something very, very similar to that?
Oh yeah, that's for sure. It was wasn't any easier, that's for sure. Though it was definitely tough. Alan's loss is the biggest loss of my life from a family members or whatever. That's the hardest thing I've ever went through. Dale's is a tough loss because he's so big in the sport and such a big individual from a carried so much clout and everything. Just to lose him was just unbelievable.
The very next week at Rockingham, Steve takes the team to victory lane in one of the most emotional races that I've ever experienced. Tell me about that weekend.
That was a good race. That was I believe we tested there, but I can't remember that one. That's way back before Daytona. But we unloaded with a good car. We had a really good package back then. We did a little bit of testing to get us to that package that we had. Knew we had a good car. Was up front. I don't know if we led a lot of laps or how that went down, but I know we were up front the whole day. In the top group. But it was it's really cool. Steve had a lot of drive. Steve has a lot of talent, back then. And unfortunate with his accident, I know that'll be another subject, but had a lot of talent then. We were moving, man, we were building a great team right then, at that particular time period. And even with the loss of Dale, that was going to be a good, successful year, really.
You hit the nail on my head.
Oh, yeah.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
That was going to be my next question. You go to Darlington for the Southern 500, and in the Busch race, he gets in this really bad freak accident.
Absolutely, yeah.
With Larry Foyt, and he gets hurt. At what point did you realize how serious his injuries were?
We went to the hospital that night. First of all, we had to, we seen him race, and Ty Norris was, general manager then, and so we had to say, all right, we got to get a driver for the car for tomorrow, because Steve's not going to be able to make it. That's kind of all I knew at the time. That's all I knew, So okay, well, who are we going to get, right? So it's like, to me, the choice is, I was the one that brought up Kenny Wallace, not because I had a relationship with the Wallaces, it was because of his history and his background and the races we had coming up, thinking, okay, this is a 1 or 2 race deal. And quite honestly, I thought he'd run really good at Darlington, and so obviously, it ended up being a lot longer than that, you know. So when we went to the hospital that night, after everything was all over, and I think after the Busch race, we put Kenny in the car, see if he'd fit. That was another reason, because thought their build was similar and be able to fit in the seat. So anyway, we didn't realize how bad it was. We went to the hospital that night. You know, we heard that he was hurt, but you don't really realize. Okay, so they tell you you're hurt and tell him he's in intensive care, but that don't really register until you walk over there and you see it.
Yeah.
And then, wow, then it registered. You know, this is bad. You know, and had no clue. And I don't think any of us did at the racetrack until that night when we went to the hospital. You know, it was crazy. You know how bad he was. So,
was there ever a point, maybe after Alan, maybe after Dale, maybe after Steve got hurt, that you considered walking away? You know what? This just isn't worth it.
right? You know, I don't think so. No,
Really?
I didn't. I mean, you know, yeah, it's just so much. I mean, racing's all I've ever really done, other than my, you know, high school childhood. You know, is when I did other things. You know, and a little bit after that. But you know, I've always been a racer of some type. You know, and then don't really know anything else. But not that I couldn't go do something else.
Well, other than vacuum cleaners.
Yeah, vacuum cleaners and real estate, right? So, yeah, I don't think that's ever really approached me or thought, but wasn't a thought process back then. You know, yeah, you get aggravated with the Mayfield Cranifus situation. That was very, very heartbreaking. You know, and you know, but you don't really think about the part of like, I'm had enough of this. You know, that never really crossed my mind back then. You know, it probably should have, but it didn't. You know, I always wanted to be a racer and always want to do what I do.
2002, you did move over to Roush Racing, and then there were some other jobs in there, and you did go to work for Petty Enterprises. Right. 2007, you're released by Petty Enterprises as Bobby Labonte's crew chief, and then within days, you have this really bad fall at your shop. That was a really bad week for you.
That was a tough week, yeah.
What happened?
So I'm have my little shop that my son had his Busch East car back then, you know, K&N or Arca car now, I guess, isn't it? But anyway, had his Busch East car there, and we were getting ready to go to Dover. So, you know, we only worked on that on the weekends and or weeknights and whenever we get spare time. We both had full-time jobs. So anyway, he and his buddy of his just got to the shop that afternoon and pushed the car outside to do some body work. So, all right, while that car's out of the way, I really need another light right here, right where the car was sitting. So I got my extension lighter out in a 20-foot ceiling and got a drill gun, and then ended up, you know, with a pushing up, which is obviously pushing down on the ladder, and ended up the ladder slipped. That's what happened, and then I went down. So and I landed on. This is the doctor telling me this. I don't remember a dang thing. I remember that this is like at 7 o'clock at night or whatever it was, and I vaguely remember a couple of petty guys coming in to see me because the wind tunnel's right up the street, and they come to see me because they knew where my shop was. You know, to say how bad they felt that I left, you know, and they hated it and all this good stuff. You know, I vaguely remember them coming by the shop. That was at 1 o'clock, you know, in the afternoon. And that's what I remember of that day. You know, that's where my day ends, right in that time period. So anyway, I fell, or the doctor told me I jumped off the ladder when it started slipping. He said I probably jumped off because of the way my injuries were. I shattered my left heel completely, just destroyed it. And then compression fracture in my back and concussion, and my upper, that was my L3 is my compression fracture, and then screwed up some upper part of my back also. And then anyway, it was a bad day. I remember about, I don't know, it's probably I think they told me it was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Is when I started remembering things, and that's when the big guy was at the end of the bed setting my foot. He was like, you're killing me. That's funny. It's funny now. Funny. It wasn't funny then by no means, but it's funny now telling the story, you know. And yeah, that's one of those lessons where that's when I wanted to walk away from everything then, you know, because that was a lot of pain, you know. I was in trouble.
Well, you were going to limp away.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yep. But yeah, it was That's quite the experience, quite the week.
What are you doing these days?
So running ARCA race team, crew chief of the team, and then help the owner run it. Which owner he's new at owning the team. He's only owned it for 2 years, Chad Bryant. And it's funny that I hired him as a crew chief, for Cunningham Motorsports, which is what the team used to be called. I hired him as a crew chief, and the next thing I know, owns the thing. But the Cunninghams and another partner wanted to get out of the racing. They'd had enough. They were both older people. They'd kind of had enough, and then anyway, that's kind of next thing you know, he's buying the thing while I'm in Mexico on vacation. But it's a few things that fell through on other people buying it, and he didn't want to see it go to waste and go away. And that's what was getting ready to happen. So he ended up buying it, trying to make a go of it, and he's been doing it for this is the third year right now, so it's been going good. So that's what we're doing. Work hard, that's for sure. It's a lot of work. We do some of the same things we've always done, but just fewer people on the ARCA side. So you got to work more hours and all that good stuff. So that's tough.